All right, welcome everybody to our Mail It In podcast. Appreciate you tuning in. We're not going to waste any time. We're just going to get right to it today. What do we have?
I don't know, high school sports. High school sports, your theories on high school sports?
I might talk about a little high school sports. I think you wanted to talk about the trading deadline for the NHL.
If we have time for it. So
I thought you wanted to start off with that.
no, not at all. I thought we were going to get into the...
Okay. Well, I guess not to be anticlimactic a little bit, but I was just going to talk about a little bit of high school stuff. Again, this may be for not all, but for some. Quick shout out to my alma mater, Linden Christian High School. Both boys and girls won their playoff games for state tournament, and so that's really awesome. But that's about all for that.
It's in Washington State.
So, just a couple things too, like, the Caledonia boys and girls are finishing up their seasons, or they're actually in the playoffs or districts or whatever there. And, it just got me to think too, like, what are the things that are involved with making a good program? Like what makes for a successful program? And that's kind of a big topic, I guess, because first of all, you got to determine what is a successful program. And that can be different depending on the school that you're at. Some schools just fielding a team or getting a team out there that functions and makes it through the season, I guess, and just plays and has fun and whatever is a success. Other schools, that's not, their success is more wins and losses, or, some places define it differently than others. And, that's great. And I think, the athletic department and the community has to sort of, be a part of that. And everyone may define it a little differently. But as far as like, what most people I think would think is a successful program is one that, wins games, does it the right way, teaches kids all the lessons about sports that sports teaches.
So in terms of like a real world example, I think Rockford could be a good example of a school that is out to be athletically successful. They put a bunch of money into their sports, and then you look at a school previously like Caledonia, which we've been doing a better job recently because of athletic director, new one coming in a couple of years ago. But before all of that, Caledonia, the community in general, didn't care about being, I guess, I wouldn't say didn't care, but didn't really, for them in term like winning and going to like the state championship, it really wasn't a big deal to them. So, I mean,
I think you're painting that with a little bit of a broad brush. I would
what
say.
What do you mean by broad brush? Like in terms of the
just
community,
saying no one cares and people
I didn't
don't
say
really care.
no one cared. I said no one.
That's not really true.
No one like.
I would say
they didn't care if they made it to the playoffs or made it to the state championship.
Well, you're going to be generalizing no matter what. I would say a school like Rockford has a high focus on athletic success when it comes to wins and losses, when it comes to tournament victories, state championships, just overall excellence. I would say they're probably the top of at least of Western Michigan as far as like
but I'm sure Rockford has people that
saying overall
that don't care about sports either.
But to say like Caledonia didn't care about sports is not the case. I mean, I think there's a decent sized contingent of people in our community that don't give a rip about sports and don't care, don't want any money put into it, really don't would never go to a game anyway and don't care. There's a number of people in the community that are like myself that are very enthusiastic, that want to see success, that want it to be great. There's a lot of people in the middle that are kind of like, casual, like, okay, if we win, that's great. And if we don't, we don't.
Which you're on the football and lacrosse board, right? But there's a lot of spots open to be on
What?
the board, like to be on a sports board, like the football board or the lacrosse board.
Okay,
Isn't
you're
there openings?
yeah, but what does that have to do with the
It
tea
has
in
to do
China?
with
Price of tea in
people
China.
not people caring but not caring enough to
Okay.
participate in the what it takes to be good.
Well, you're getting off on a little bit of a tangent, but I mean, like, in a lot of places, there's not a lot of people that are necessarily always willing to volunteer. You have that at churches, you have that everywhere. Everybody fights that to a certain extent. Like, how willing are you to get involved? How willing are you to coach a team, to be on the board of a youth organization or whatever? You know, I would say that there's always struggles with that in this community, no matter the sport. That happens to a certain extent everywhere. But here, it's a little disappointing, I would say. But yeah, I mean, it goes back to, and the whole key to this, again, like I grew up in a town where, you know, especially with basketball, but also athletic excellence was just expected. Like the whole community does what it takes for the players to be great. So every year, whether it's basketball, especially football, also to a not as great of an extent, but still, like it's just excellence is expected. And when you grow up in that environment, you don't really understand it until you leave and go to a place that's different, and then you kind of look back on it and say, "Wow, that is something."
Which is why the change a couple of years ago was needed. And now
What
that
change are you referring to?
referring to athletic director being changed, football coaches being changed, Caledonia basketball coach on the way out, I believe. Um,
Where
I
did you hear that?
I'm pretty sure he's on the way out.
Okay, I
Uh,
that's news to me, but
so, um, but when you do good, people will come to games and people will support, which you can't. You would to make a community want to, or I guess let me think about it and keep talking while I
well,
kind of
I
I
just
kind
I
of think
think
about.
I think the whole thing is community driven and community support driven. What does the community want? That's why, like, and it's kind of harsh sometimes. If there was a basketball coach that was at my old hometown and they had losing records for multiple years, they'd be gone. And so the tolerance there just isn't, it's not the same depending on community to community. So it's always different. But it's kind of like it's all driven by the community. It's not driven as much by the athletic director as people think,
I'm
because
saying what you're saying, but you're
the
telling me
athletic
that
director
what does that
responds to
mean?
the community.
I'm saying what you're saying, but you're not. You're saying what
Okay.
does that mean? That doesn't mean anything. Like what does that
Um,
mean? The price of China. I'm saying what you're saying.
well, what I'm getting at is these days, and it's so much different, I think, than when it was when I was in school. High school. I went to high school from '86 to '90 or whatever. Graduated in 1990. So things were way different. And these days, if you want to win, if you want to be successful, you have to have coaches that are willing to put time in more than just the actual season that the sport is played in. Like with Coach Pennington, his thing is what he does is year round. And if you want to be successful in the OK Red in Division 1 or 2, whichever playoff division that we happen to fall into, you can't just do it during the season. You can't just say, "Oh, well, whoever comes up, we'll just coach them up during the season, see how we do." That'll never work. You'll fail. And so, and I'm not saying football's the same as every other sport, but a lot of these other things too, like you have to invest. You have to look at kids when they're young. If you are not involved with basketball players, for example, at a young age,
Which is what Caledonia's not.
well, I don't
They're
know.
not
I
involved.
don't know
They're not
exactly.
involved.
I don't know
Period.
exactly.
They have games that the high school players, whether it be girls or boys, will ref on either Saturday or Sunday mornings. But that's it. I think they do not have any sort of
That's not what I'm talking
camps.
about.
You're talking about that.
That's not what I'm talking about.
You're talking about
And you
being
need you need to make sure that you have your facts straight before you start making
you're talking
generalizations.
about being involved in the younger sports, and I'm talking about us
I
not being involved in it.
I don't know
Caledonia,
exactly.
the old head football coach was not involved in the youth.
Okay,
That's
that
what
I
I'm
know.
talking about.
That I know. But as far as like exactly what the current, say, basketball players do with the youth, I'm not exactly sure. I don't think they do a whole lot.
I
But
have
I'm not
friends that
talking
go
about
there.
just that. I'm not talking about just that. I'm talking about you have to be involved to a certain extent with girls and boys at a young age so that you have resources, you have practices, you have things that they can do that are age appropriate
Right.
and direction for them. Hey, we'd like you to do this, or we'd like you to go to this camp, or we'd like you to be involved in this particular team in the off season if you can. You have to do all those things when they're 5 or 6 or whatever. Back where I'm from, pretty much every single kid that it starts with a basketball in their hand and they're given a chance and they're saying, see what you can do.
Okay, but that's where you are. We're talking about
right. And I'm
Caledonia.
comparing it to here.
We're
I'm
talking-
saying that is a success. This is a successful place, and that's what's done.
Okay.
So what I'm saying is you have to go and you have to do that. You can't just start with kids when they're freshmen in high school.
I agree.
It just will not work. You again, and I guarantee you, like other programs that are successful at whatever sport it is, it doesn't have to be just basketball and football. It can be whatever. Like, unless they're new sports or they're not like, I'm trying to think of a good example, like snow skiing or something. I think that's kind of a sport that a lot of people start when they're a little older. There's not really an established program and club and all that. I'm not really talking about those so much. And then not ripping on snow skiing. I mean, it's great. We've done it. It's fun. And some of those guys are pretty good.
Skiing. Just skiing.
Right. Some of those guys are pretty good. Well, there's water skiing too.
Water skiing's not a high school sport.
And I'm just talking about the ones that are a little more established, if you will. Those are, it takes practice and time, and it maybe used to not be that way. It used to be that you could kind of coach the season, and you could get the English teacher or whatever to be the coach, and it would be fine. And that's tough to do these days. Trying to find the right coach is important, and
Okay.
and it obviously in Caledonia's case with football, it made a big difference.
So I have a question.
Okay.
Why or what do you think that Caledonia's trending in the right direction, not just with football, but with other sports? Like for my baseball, for instance, when I played baseball, Coach Berghardt, first year on the job, he took us to the Little League field on Saturday mornings, and we would hang out with the little kids and hand them Gatorade. What
Okay.
do you think Caledonia's on the right direction in terms of all sports?
Well, I think in general, I would say yes. Like I think your coach was a good hire. Like from what I saw, which was again a small sample just last year, but from what I understand he's doing, I think he's taking the baseball program in the right direction. And I think it's kind of been a little down for quite a while before that. Again, that's just my opinion.
Well, in
whatever.
2018, 2019, Gillis took the team to the
I guess I'm not talking about.
I don't know.
I'm
really
not,
good though.
I'm not talking about 1 year. I'm talking about just in general. And I'm not trying to rip on past coaches as much as I'm looking forward and saying, hey, this kind of outlook I think is needed if you want to be really good. It doesn't mean you can't field a team or put a team on the field, but you need continuity. You need support from the parents and the community. I mean, obviously you need some funding, and we hope obviously the bond that's coming up for the local thing passes too, because that
What is
stadium.
that? I don't know what that is. Can you talk about
They're
that?
they're putting a bond forward to the community in May to vote on that asks for some more funding from the community to complete the projects they couldn't complete with the original one in 2020 because the price of construction went way up.
So does that mean the turf, or is the turf going in
The
already?
turf's going in this summer, which was desperately needed.
Turf for the football field.
Right. That stadium hasn't been updated in 25 plus years. That's kind of embarrassing in my opinion. Our stadium is in my opinion, by far the least fabulous of any of them in the OK Red, for sure. And so it's not being able to host playoff games, having some years, and I have film of this, like 2018 or whatever it was, 29, where between the hash marks it was like 3 inches of mud. It's not always that
It's
bad,
it's
but
kind of crazy considering West Ottawa's not that good of a football team, but they just built a double decker stadium.
apparently their stadium is unreal. I have not seen it. I would like to go and see it. I hear it's quite a place. So, but it's just all the amenities like the scoreboard, the press box, the locker rooms have to be nice. All these things contribute, and those things are on the docket at least. And I certainly hope that we as a community pass the bond because you're talking about people that are trying to be very good stewards with the money, not wasting it. But it is an investment that lasts a long time. I think they're redoing Scotland Yard, the underlayment to the field. I believe they're doing also as part of that bond too. Which so anyway, it's a topic that you can talk about for a while. I'm not saying I know everything. I have a lot of perspective. I've seen a lot of sports. I've seen a lot of high school sports. I've been a part of it. I know what a good program looks like, and I would defend that that ability and that cognizance to anyone because I've seen bad and I've seen good, and I know what good is. So, it really is just a matter of again, I'm not ripping on any coaches. I'm just saying here's what it is. Here's the facts. You decide. But it's fun. I'll leave it at this. And I'm not trying to pick on basketball, but I went to the first, like, I hadn't been to a high school game in a long time, and I think probably it was 5 years ago. I went to a Caledonia game, and it was just very, very different from what I remembered when I grew up. It was very quiet in the gym. Like all you could hear was the sneakers on the floor. There were basically parents and relatives of the players that were there. There was no students there. There was no band. There was no cheerleaders. There was no enthusiasm at all in the gymnasium. And again, not ripping on anybody or anything. I'm just saying that's a fact. And I just was shocked. Like
Well, that was 5 years ago. I mean, now
right.
they have student sections. I don't know if
Yeah.
they have the band in there, but
The games that I've gone to, we went to a couple this year at the beginning. I think they have a band sometimes. There's no cheerleaders. There is a student section sometimes.
are you sure? Do they not come in at halftime and dance at all?
I think at halftime the dance team does something. I think, but I'm talking
maybe.
about the classic like Hoosiers movie cheerleaders that are cheering on the sidelines in front of a student section. I know too that in the past, I think students at our school have not gone to games partially because they were basically told to sit down and shut up and they couldn't say a word. I think those restrictions have been loosened, although I think they're pretty heavily regulated, which is, I get it, right? I get it. I was a kid. I was in those stands and I remember, but we had a great time in those stands and we were not negative. We weren't, we would yell at the referees occasionally, but it was never anything awful, never anything bad. I just like I remember going to those games and just having a great time. Like I remember going to games, it would be so loud in that Linden Christian Gymnasium that I distinctly remember walking out of there and my ears would be ringing just because of how loud it was. And it was an experience. And I don't, like you never have experienced that. You never experienced it when you were there. And granted, that gym's a little smaller, and my goodness, Lennon, holy cow, we need every time I see pictures of our gym, it looks smaller and smaller. So,
I don't
boy, we need to
remember.
do something
I
about
don't
that.
remember going to a basketball game. To my knowledge, I went to the hockey games because they overlap in the winter. But
No, but I'm just saying, like, and I'm not the only one. Like, a lot of people remember that too. Like, it was different. I don't know why it's different. I would love to see, like you go to one of our football games, it is a community event. Like, there's the stands are packed.
our game against Rockford had what, like a record-setting number,
I
like
think
10, 13,000
I
at
think
least.
talking to someone who knows, I think they had like a playoff game or something. I think they said that had a little more, but it was up there. It was probably like the second biggest crowd they could remember. But like you just go to a normal game is what I'm saying. All the stands are full. People from the community are there. It's a community event. People go to the games even if they don't necessarily know the players on the team. They still go because it's a community event.
Right.
That's how basketball was for me when I was in school. It was something where everybody went. Granted, a smaller stadium, but it was packed.
You
And
also didn't have a hockey team, and that plays a
well,
part in it. If they're playing on the same night, people are going to be split.
sure, I
There's going to
guess.
be half go to the basketball game, half go to the hockey game.
I suppose. I mean, I understand what you're saying. That's kind of dumb scheduling, in my opinion. But you do what you got to do with hockey and rinks and availability. So I'm smart enough to know that part. But yeah, I get it. But still, like, what is hockey a community event even then? Like, is that a community event for Caledonia? I don't know.
I think it got bigger. At least it was big
At
between kind
times,
of my
yeah,
junior and senior year of high school. I don't know about this
yeah,
year. Didn't go to a game, but
right. At times, but again, like I guess it's what do you want out of it? I mean, yeah. So, like I said, I don't have all the answers. I'm not trying to rip on anybody in particular. I'm just observing what I'm observing. I'm giving my opinions out, and whether you like them or not, that's that's the way I see it. So, it's like I said, it's a big topic. There's more to talk about as far as like, the talented athletic kids that Caledonia has lost over the years, due to the current state of its different sports programs and other things there.
the past state, the
Yeah,
past
yeah,
state.
the past, but and so that's hurt our school too. So, it's just, I guess it's a topic that we can have further conversation on. Love to have other people's perspectives and opinions on it. I'm not trying to say things that aren't true or generalize too much. I'm just trying to say things from what I've seen in my perspective, and just sort of a disclaimer there. But
Yeah.
anyway,
So kind of just to, I guess, re-say what my dad said. We will most likely have another podcast episode about kind of what he talked about at the end there, and then maybe get a couple other people's views on it, whether they're in here or from phone call, just to kind of get another look at kind of what we were saying. But no, thank you guys for tuning into this
yeah.
episode. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. We'll talk to you later.